My background's an entrepreneur, businessman. I've started 4 businesses, currently own 2, employed over hundreds of people. It's a fundamental need in our economy, as well as I'm a CPA and have my master's in accounting and emphasis in taxation. Tax is a big issue. We need people that know how to count. We need people that know how to create jobs. So this is my background. I feel it fits into the situation we have at hand.
What does it say that we have a couple of independent candidates running? What does that say about the way our system is working right now?
Well, when Gallup says you have an 85% disapproval rate of Congress, to think we're going to do one of the 2 parties again is just insanity by definition. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, it's insane. So we need a new third approach to move us forward, not backwards.
If I were to look, though, on paper, your beliefs and your positions, it would seem would be very similar to Mr. Sass. Explain to me maybe some differences.
The difference is on moral stances we don't compromise. Constitutional stances we don't. So we think those are things to hold firm on. However, on civil issues, things we need to be working between both sides to find solutions. We need to be negotiable. So extreme stances that don't compromise on civil issues isn't going to get us anywhere. It's been an endless fight. So I'm a big fan of things like Simpson-Bowles. I'm not aligned with Paul Ryan, who said no to Simpson-Bowles. I believe Simpson-Bowles that would have got our debt from 65% of GDP to 25% of GDP by 2040, bipartisan compromise. We need to say yes to that and not stand with extreme party leaders that have uncompromising demands.
As far as getting on the ballot and all of that, explain to me how that works and where you are in that situation then.
Well, we're very excited about that. It takes over 4,000 signatures. They need to be from around the state. We've had 85 counties signed to date. All our signatures were gathered by volunteers. Other candidates have used paid sources to get their signatures. All ours have been volunteer-based. So we think it's a great testament to the people of Nebraska that say, hey, we need a new voice.
I would have to think it's a little frustrating, though, because being outside the 2-party system, is it harder to get out there and to get heard because there are a lot of the forums and a lot of these kinds of things? Do they necessarily invite you?
No, they discriminate against independents, but that's a testament to them. If you're not willing to hear all sides or bring more people into the debate, you're really selling yourself short. But they have to be accountable to their conscience. I have to be accountable to mine. So, yeah, it's an uphill battle being independent, mainly from the organizational structure around the state. Those are established, and that's been the biggest problem, not so much the money, because we've been getting out and meeting a lot of people. So,
when you do get out and meet people and introduce them and explain things you stand for, how do people generally respond?
Great. I mean, first you have to get over, this state's no doubt conservative. I'm conservative too. When you say you're an independent, you have to kind of define who you are. So anytime we have 20 minutes, people usually are on the train supporting us because they believe what we have to say. But it takes about that long to understand and really be convinced who we really are. And once they're convinced, they support us.
There's a lot of talk these days about the overreach of the federal government. I'm guessing you would agree with that.
Yeah, we stand up against the regulators, EPA, OSHA, that are coming down on our good, upstanding businesses. Where I'm different is I do think Wall Street messed up significantly, about destroyed our entire economy. They couldn't supervise themselves. I don't believe in bailouts like the Republicans did. I think the market would have corrected them, but since we don't let the market correct Wall Street anymore, I'm okay with regulators for them because they about took us to the abyss in an economy. But for most of our businesses, including our smaller banks that are now subjected to regulations based on big bank bad behavior, they need to be fought for because we need regulators out of our ranches, out of our farms, out of our community banks. We need to help these guys.
You brought up something I was going to ask you about. We're about 5 years after TARP and the bailouts and all of that. Do you think we've learned our lessons in this country?
No. It's scary to see the lending behavior starting to happen again. The Great Depression back in the 30s was incredibly bad, but it taught some very valuable lessons that I think the greatest economy was built on the back of the Depression, the values learned from there. We missed that opportunity to get our values back. And so, no, I don't think we learned our lesson. Moral hazard is happening, but unfortunately we had a GOP party that didn't believe in that and decided to bail out their friends for campaign donations. But you know, to be fair to the GOP, I think they were looking at a larger scale economic crisis, and they had a lot of pressure on them. But if we're going to be capitalistic, which I think we need to be, you have to embrace failure, and that party has a hard time doing that.
Another thing, that common theme I hear from people is just that our Constitution is under attack. Would you agree with that? And give me some examples.
100% agree. This president is horrendous in leadership. He breaks the rules every chance he gets. He sets the rules. My question is, who's going to hold him accountable? We need to, and we will. So, yeah, the Constitution is under attack. Religious liberty has been my paramount issue from the start. Free expression, free exercise. These things have been under attack every day, and I'm going to fight to defend them.
I hear a lot of candidates, you know, if there's one amendment of the Bill of Rights that gets mentioned, it's a second. But I'm guessing the First Amendment maybe is the one that hits closest to home with you?
Yeah, well, and you know what, they kind of relate. The Second Amendment, people want to talk about guns in schools, and I always say, if we can't start teaching with thou shalt not kill, we're not going to get there. If we can establish thou shalt not kill can be a fundamental teaching in our schools, it starts there. So, yeah, they kind of relate. But yeah, free exercise, free expression is very important to our campaign and our supporters and followers.
And you mentioned you're conservative. I imagine that follows through on the fiscal side of things, that you would support limited government, cutting taxes, cutting programs, cutting spending to get there.
Yeah, that's the irony. If you look at the budget, we have not lowered federal outlays one single year since 1965. Both parties have had significant control. The lie is to believe that the Republicans will cut a budget. They take care of their interests, Democrats take care of theirs. We need a fiscal conservative independent of both these parties to go in and make significant cuts, and not just to attack the deficit, but to attack the debt. And this is one of our primary goals in running for this office.
Immigration. I live in a community here where at least 20% of our population is minority, many of them immigrants. A lot of my friends in agriculture say we've got to do something. How do we do that? And then other people say, but we can't reward lawbreakers. Give me a sense of where you're at on immigration issues.
Sure. I believe in securing the borders first. We have to get the borders secured, and it's not just for immigration. It's for controlling the flow of drugs. Primarily, it's for national security, and it also does affect immigration. So if we don't address border control first, we're going to be dealing with the same problem just like we were dealing with the 4 times magnitude problems from 1986, from the last time they dealt with the bill. So once we need to get that secured, until we secure the border, it's hard to assess where we need to go from there. Now, my opinion, if we show we secure the border, I don't think deportation of 13 million people here is really feasible or going to happen. And we have people living in the shadows. So I'm for a path to residency or some form of legal status after we have secured the border. And make sure that's clear, after we have secured the border. Until we do that and you make this proclamation, the border won't get secured. So, and then hopefully we don't have to deal with this issue again, but not a path to citizenship. Everyone that is trying to do that legally, we need to get back of the line so we don't cut in front of the line of people who have tried to observe the rule of law first. So, but people living in the shadows, it's a problem. We can't expect to take economic rights from people but not give them some form of base level rights. Or we can deny entrance and deny economic rights. We just need to be consistent. We haven't been consistent as a country on that issue.
I also wanted to touch on agriculture is obviously very important to Nebraska. A lot of friends in agriculture were very frustrated over the passage of a farm bill. It took a couple of years to get done. What are some of your thoughts on the nation's agricultural policy?
The farm bill is very interesting. It's been 5 years in the works. It started in 2010, finally passed in 2014. I know our state's conservative, but man, they overlook what the GOP did last year. The GOP killed the farm bill in early 2013. Now, both parties killed the bill late in 2013 over an unrelated political issue. Now, we finally got the bill passed in 2014. Overall, the bill is very good for our ranchers. I don't have too many complaints. Did a great job. For our farmers, I think there's things to be worried about over 3 to 5 years. There's conservation requirements to get the insurance in the first place with no details. It's kind of like Obamacare. So the devil in the detail in the conservation requirements. And that's something, if I'm elected, I'll be very diligent to watch those details on. But two, it protects southern farmers better than it does northern farmers. Nebraska, we believe in equality under the law. We need people up there fighting for same price protection supports no matter what you grow. But fundamentally, you will not hear about this from either party because they both want to take care of their people in those chair positions without being criticized. But we're taking care of northern farmers a lot worse than we take care of southern farmers, and this needs to be addressed.
One issue we haven't talked about yet, Obamacare, healthcare. I don't know very many people who wouldn't say that our healthcare system is broken and that we need to do something. What are your thoughts on Obamacare? And it's the law of the land and been upheld by the Supreme Court. Where do we go from here now?
Yeah, it's why I'm independent. Neither side has a good option. We were having 12, 13% inflation, mainly due to special interest protectionist laws. They donate to the Republican Party. They're in this campaign. They protect the prices of drugs. They protect competition from hospitals. So you can't be with Republicans. They're going to protect their special interest contributors. At the same time, Obamacare is a disaster. We have veterans dying under the watch of government care. How in the world do we expect the government's going to take care of the rest of the citizens? So two-prong attack. I would like to see Obamacare overturned, defunded. I don't think that's likely. It looks like the Republicans are moderating around the country. But I would like to see that overturned. Furthermore, I'd probably stand with Democrats and attack Republicans' special interests in drugs, hospitals, insurance companies, etc., because cost is the fundamental problem to both sides. And we need free markets to come into play to make healthcare reasonable again. But they're being denied by special interest groups.
One overarching thing over all these things we've talked about is just the gridlock and the partisan nature of things in Washington. How do we break through that and see some our lawmakers make some laws, see Congress do something?
The people need to rise up and take responsibility for their vote. My approach is very simple. We need to put more bills in through committee that have cuts behind them. Put those committees on the record. Then it's the job, if the committees don't let that bill get out of committee, to throw those committee members out of office. If you get past the committees and those bills get presented to the floor, look at the voting records of those representatives. The citizens have to rise up and start throwing all these guys out of office that have the inability to make any tough decisions for the long-term future of this country.
Just briefly, just touch on, I'm just curious, your background, your family, how it is you got interested in politics and all of that in a nutshell.
I was interested in politics at a very young age. I interned for Congressman Christensen out of Omaha back in the 90s. Decided to pursue a business route, saw a lot of evil stuff when I was a kid out in D.C. It really hasn't changed too much, but I had a love at an early age for it. But at the end of the day, I'm the product of grandparents that cared more about me than themselves, and I feel I owe it to my kids, other kids, the future generations to stand up and fight for them now, to be on the record of saying, hey, we didn't let this thing go the wrong way without standing up and speaking for people. So we got involved mainly for the best interest of our people, not corporations, not donors, not ourselves, just like our grandparents used to do. The paramount sentence that defines our campaign is promote the general welfare as called for in the Constitution. We have one party that believes providing the general welfare. We have another party that believes in promoting the corporate welfare. That's why we're in the middle. We've got to get back to an attitude of promoting the general welfare, and that means having the interest of all people, trying to rise the tide of this entire country. And so that's kind of the attitude we have in this campaign that we don't feel is offered by either party.